Welcome to the UGC EPG Pathshala lecture series in computer science. In this series of lectures, we have been looking at the subject software engineering. For this session, we will be continuing on the requirements elicitation techniques. The major learning objectives of this particular session includes to describe the requirements elicitation techniques, to discuss how the prototypes may be used in the requirements elicitation process. Although we have studied about interviewing, preparing questionnaire by means of requirements elicitation, there is another source of knowledge where we can acquire for this requirements elicitation, which might include social analysis. This social analysis is also known as observation, where we collect the requirements by observing the people who are doing their normal work. This majorly helps in plotting out the number of cars on the road, the total usage of people, of the number of two-wheelers on the road, something like that. And by social analysis, we can find the additional resources needed by the user when the user is unable to explain their expected requirements. These social analysis are majorly of three types: passive observation, active observation, and explanatory observation. Further, for this observation on social analysis, people often find it hard to describe what they do because it is so natural to them. Sometimes the best way to understand it is to observe them at work. So, this social analysis techniques helps us identify the naturality of the people who are at their work. Looking at the various types of social analysis, social analysis is carried out without the direct involvement of the observer in the society, which is a passive observation. The observation of the people's work is carried out by recording using videotapes, video cameras, and surveillance cameras. These are majorly been helpful, say, in the toll gates or in the hospitals, where many a times it is passively been observed what people are doing. And if you are about to look at the trend of the purchase, then it can be it can be also installed in various shopping malls. So, the documentation of the problem and requirements are prepared just only from the recorded data. So, by passive observation, there is no direct involvement of the people, purely based out of indirect involvement, that is recording through videotapes, video cameras, and surveillance cameras. A justification is being taken up. The second type being active observation, where social analysis is carried out with the direct involvement of the observer, which is in contradictory to the previous one. Here there is a direct involvement of the observer in the society. The observer encourages people to work with the existing product to perform the operations on this same product. So, this product is taken directly to the observer, tries to identify what are the major hiccups this product might give. From that, we will be able to clarify or clear how this could be improved. So, this active observation involves people directly. So, the observer provides the domain knowledge to the user and makes the report of the requirements of the people by observing their day-to-day work with the product. And the third type of social analysis is on the explanatory social observation, where in this type of observation the user explains what they are doing while using the product. The observer just takes a note using the explanation given by the user. So, whenever they are trying to work with the machine or with the product, they give clear set of explanation on what is the effectiveness of this particular software or the product. Simultaneously, from the observation we take a note, and this might be helpful for analysis. The other requirements elicitation technique include conducting requirements workshop. By requirements workshop, we invite lot of participants and we fix on a specific person who is called a facilitator, who will ensure on the success of the discussion. So, this requirements workshop is a collaborative event in which a selected group of stakeholders group together or work together to discover, create, verify and document requirements, deliver the work products. So, these requirements workshop is a collaborative event where there will be a lot of participants who will be actively participating, discussing on various events and happening, tries to create, verify all the requirements. So, this gathers all key stakeholders together for a short but strongly focused period. So, this happens in a strongly focused period sometime, where there will be two major people who will be involved. One is supposed to be the facilitator who ensures the success of the discussion. The other one would be a participants who will look at the sponsors, content participant, facilitator and a recorder. So, with the active participations of all these members, we can create a lot of ideas, we can discover a lot of ideas which might be helpful for the next phase of development. How to make this requirements workshop working? So, the team members have to create, review and complete important requirement deliverables. Then it is the responsibility of the facilitator to manage on the group's process. There is another person who is actively involved, who records all the documents, the group's work as it proceeds. By the end of it, we will prepare warm up materials which has project specific information like drafts of requirements documents, suggested features which this product would support, copies of interviews, analysis report on the industry, bug reports from the existing system, etc. So, these reports will be presented to the participants and to the facilitator for further discussion. And there will be an out of box thinking preparation which will happen, which will discover a lot of new initiatives. This kind of requirement workshop are sometimes called quality function deployment, where the facilitator and the participant keenly understand on the product, creates and discovers new ideas, thereby ensuring the quality in terms of the functionality. Being the facilitator who helps for the success of this discussion, as a facilitator, he should establish professional and objective tone to the meeting. He is the person who will initiate and stop the meeting on time, establish and enforce the rules that should be followed for the meeting, introduce the goals over which the discussions are to happen and the various agendas that today's discussion or the discussion on the event of discussion for the meeting, manage the meeting and keep the team on track. If there is any deviation on the discussion that happens, it is the responsibility of the facilitator to bring the discussion live. The facilitator facilitates a process of decision on consensus making, but avoid participating in the content. Many a time he looks after only the successful end of the process, he takes decisions, but then unnecessarily he tries participating in the content because it might go in a different flow. The facilitator makes certain that all stakeholders participate and have their input heard. And the major responsibility of the facilitator is to control troublesome or unproductive behavior of the various participants. Some of the problems that this kind of workshops would encounter and the possible list of solutions based out of these workshops include time management being major problem. It is difficult to get going after breaks and lunch. So, key stakeholders may be late returning, maybe post lunch, post breaks they will be late in terms of returning, and there will be grandstanding dominant positions which the key stakeholders can take. There will be a lack of inputs from the stakeholders. There will be a lot of negative comments which might obstruct or deviate from the regular going. There will be irrelevant behaviors and turf wars, and the energy post lunch session would generally fade. So, these are the major drawbacks that would happen in the workshop sessions which runs for a whole day. But then, as I have already told, it is the responsibility of the facilitator to take or to carry forward these kind of discussions in a fruitful manner. So, facilitator keeps a timer for all breaks and finds anyone who is late. So, everyone gets one free pass for that. To take up every suggestion posted by the participant, they are given only 5 minutes for the position statement. Facilitator also encourages everyone to use a 5-minute position, and it is a great idea to give a ticket which at later portion of it is carried out for the Scrum agile practices type of a meeting. The other type of requirements elicitation technique is on brainstorming session. Brainstorming is something like a group technique for generating fruitful ideas. Grouping technique for generating new useful ideas and promoting creative thinking for finding the solution to a specific issue. Having posted different agenda on the meeting, for every issue being addressed, the entire group will actively participate, come out with new and useful ideas. Generally, for this kind of brainstorming sessions, there will be around 6 to 10 members headed by the organizer who states the issue to be addressed, and every team member is allotted a certain time to express and explain their ideas. Decides the best idea by voting from the group, and that idea is selected as a solution to the issue discussed in the conference. So, the major brainstorming session that you would have seen in day to day life is the general happenings in the assembly. So, during the brainstorming session there would be different roles like leader. For every brainstorming session, the leader has to take a responsibility. This person needs to be a good listener first, and there will be a scribe who will write down every idea very clearly, and there will be team members who actively participates. For this kind of brainstorming sessions, it requires a lot of idea generation and reduction of ideas. So, these are highlighted as phases in the brainstorming sessions like idea generation and idea reduction. And during idea generation, there will be a set down of all possible, focusing on the breadth of ideas rather than the depth of ideas. Whereas, in case of reduction, we try to prune away what is not required. We will organize on the different ideas that has been generated on priority. We will rank them, we will try to group them, we will refine the ideas that are generated. So, what do we tend to mean by idea generation? Ideas are generated individually, written in a paper for later discussions. Facilitator collects all the ideas, posts in the meeting room. Idea is further reduced by pruning, grouping, defining features and prioritizing the ideas, as I have already mentioned. For every discussion like this, workshops and group discussions, convening meetings may not be helpful. So, we have to alternate by different means for requirements elicitation process. We create a storyboard layout. A storyboarding is nothing but a logical and a conceptual description of system functionality for a specific scenario. This includes the interaction between the users and the system and provides an early review of the user interface of the system. When compared to the previous systems where conducting the workshop, we may have to provide an executive facility for all the participants and the facilitator or the leader and the members of the team, whereas in case of storyboarding this becomes extremely inexpensive. These kind of storyboards are purely user friendly, informal and interactive. As we have highlighted in the agile practices, where we take up scrum meetings, where we post some user stories and any features that are to be added to the user stories can be highlighted. So, likewise the storyboarding helps us perform the task in a user friendly, informal and interactive manner, and it is easy to create and easy to modify. The storyboarding becomes obsolete after some time, and many a times it will be a bigger burden when it comes to maintenance. This is purely because of the reason that there has been no professional or formal way of organizing things. It is because of a small user stories that has been derived, things have directly gone into implementation. There are different types of storyboarding like active and passive storyboards. In passive storyboards, we tell a story to the user, walk through the system using pictures, screenshots and presentations, where there will be no active involvement of the user. Whereas in the active storyboarding, the user enumerates the story, makes it very interactive, provide a realistic experience to the user through simulations and prepares a throwaway prototype with the story that has been said. After having performed a very good storyboarding, now that it is our responsibility to go through a phase of scripted walkthrough. Each participant follows a script that defines a specific role in the play. So, the walkthrough purely will demonstrate any misunderstanding in the role, lack of information that is available to an actor or lack of specific behavior needed for the actors to succeed. Because of this walkthrough, we will be eliminating the major quantum of risk that will be involved in the project. The scripts can be modified and rerun as many times as necessary until the actors get it right. There is another technique by where we can collect all the requirements from the stakeholders. This type of requirement is called CRC cards, that is class responsibility collaboration cards. When the process breaks down due to lack of information, or when one entity talks to another entity, the collaboration is not purely been defined. So, the cards can be modified and rerun again. If you look at this picture, there will be a list of class name, ID, type, description, associated use cases, responsibilities and collaborations. So, this will be highlighted to the stakeholders and the facilitators. The responsibility of the stakeholder is to draft this kind of story cards, CRC cards, where they will mention each and every attribute or every entity that is required. This might be helpful when you are working for projects like patient history, where the patient history will be displayed at every bed in the hospital, which will highlight on who are the doctors who has addressed this particular patient and what are the responsibilities and collaboration that this patient has to be given care. So, these CRC cards might help in purposes like hospitals where patients are to be given utmost care. And there is another technique in the requirements elicitation process which is called ethnography, where we study on the people in their natural settings. Assume that the people are good at doing their job and look for non-standard ways of working, that is, they work quite naturally. They spend time getting to know people and tries to establish a trust relationship. Keep a detailed notes of all working practices, analyze them and draw conclusions from them. They in turn tries to combine observations with the open-minded interviews. These people can organize regular debriefing sessions where the ethnographer talks with people outside the process. By combining this ethnography with other elicitation techniques, we will be able to provide some fruitful methodologies. If you look at the different perspectives of this ethnography, we will be able to initially set up a new viewpoint. This viewpoint describes the context and the physical location of the work, how the people use objects to carry tasks. Therefore, in a study of a help desk, this would describe the objects which the helper had to hand and how these were organized. Not only that, these ethnographic perspectives also include social and organizational perspectives, where they try to bring day-to-day experiments of work as seen by different people who are involved. Each individually typically sees the work in a different way, and this viewpoint tries to organize and integrate all these perceptions. Further, the same ethnography can take up workflow viewpoint. This viewpoint presents the work from a series of work activities with information flowing from one activity to another. Not only that, of all the elicitation techniques, it is not essential that we have to go through all the elicitation techniques together, but we can randomly select one or two techniques by where we can gather all the information. But then once having collected most of the requirements, if you are about to create a very useful model, use case model, this will help us intend to go further with the analysis design phases in an effective manner. Some of the other approaches that this elicitation phase would take up are natural language descriptors. These natural language descriptors operate instructions purely in terms of writing it in natural languages. This requires a good background study, but many a times natural language has been notorious for leading to ambiguities within the development phase. Often these descriptions are not kept up to date, and as an alternate flow we can have form analysis, where we analyze any forms being used to gain information about the problem. These forms generally provide information about the domain data, objects, properties and its interrelationships. In summary, in this particular session of requirements elicitation, we have addressed on the various problems that we come across during the phase of requirements elicitation process. Particularly during workshops, we have addressed on the problems and we have suggested on the preferable solutions. And specifically in this particular session, we have started with one of the very good resource elicitation technique, which is social analysis, where we collect all the requirements by observation, whether it could be active observation or passive observation. The same can even be taken up by conducting brainstorming sessions, by having effective user stories or storyboarding. It can even be taken up by idea generation. It can be by scripted walkthrough, preparing CRC cards, ethnographies and natural language processing. Thank you.